Welcome to UNV Academy. In this episode, we are going to talk about the network setting of IPC. We will introduce network, port mapping, DDNS, and some other settings of IPC. Let's now get started. IPC has three methods for obtaining the IPv4 address: static, PPPoE, and DHCP. A static IP address is simply an address that doesn't change. If the camera gets a connection to the network by a static IP address, we need to input the IP address, subnet mask, and default gateway address. Make sure that the IP address of the camera is unique in the network. PPPoE combines two widely accepted standards, Ethernet and PPP, to provide an authenticated method of assigning IP addresses to client systems. If the camera is connected to the network through point-to-point over Ethernet, then switch the IP obtaining mode to PPPoE and put in the username and password provided by the Internet Service Provider. The operating mode is recommended to be set as auto-navigation. If the DHCP server is deployed in the network, the camera can automatically obtain an IP address from the DHCP server. Most routers can serve as DHCP servers. The camera also supports IPv6 add manually. MTU can be adjusted from 576 to 1500. The operating mode could be multiple strategies. The auto-negotiation is recommended. The domain name system is for turning domain names into IP addresses. It is advisable to set its value as default. Now let's move on to port settings. Currently, our IPC can map three kinds of ports out. HTTP port is the web access port. HTTPS port is the encrypted web access port. And RTSP port is the live streaming port. Generally, it is needless to modify these default port numbers. Port mapping allows services in private networks to connect over the internet with other public or private services. Turn on the port mapping. Two methods can be utilized to configure its setting: universal plug and play and manual. If the router supports UPnP, both methods above will work. It's advisable to go with UPnP since this way saves trouble. We can select mapping type as UPnP and get the UPnP mapping type as auto. The camera and router will configure available ports and be mapped automatically. Users outside of the LAN are therefore able to access the camera. We can choose UPnP mapping as manual as well, and then fill in the available port numbers manually. If the routers don't support the UPnP, we need to get the mapping type as manual, and manually configure the port numbers on both the IP camera and the router sides. Then save. The active status tells mapping works successfully. Inactive indicates the port is occupied. If the camera is connected to the internet through PPPoE, the IP address of the network may change every time it connects to the ISP server. This is inconvenient when we are remotely accessing the device with an IP address. With DDNS, IPC will obtain a domain name instead of IP address to visit the network. DDNS supports three types: Dynamic DNS, No IP, and Easy DDNS. The first two types are the third-party DDNS servers that charge. We recommend you go with the Easy DDNS as this type is provided by UniView and it is free. Complete other settings including server address, domain name, username, and password. Click Save. EasyCloud enables us to access and manage the IP cameras on the mobile surveillance app remotely. Turn on EasyCloud. Scan the QR code to download the app. Sign up for the cloud account. Then scan the QR code again with the app to add cameras. To receive an email notification when the alarm happens, we can set up an available email address here. As for Simple Network Management Protocol, it is a protocol used to realize the integrated equipment management. SNMPv3 is suggested when a camera is going to transfer info with the central servers. Make sure both the camera and the central server support SNMPv3. The last part is about 802.1x and QoS. 802.1x authentication secures network connection. When it is turned on, only the authenticated devices are able to connect to the network. QoS can fix issues like network delay and congestion. It provides a better service for specified network communication. That's all for today's learning. Hope this will be helpful to you. Thanks for your watching. See you next time.